When I first set foot in Crooked Creek, Mississippi, I thought I was stepping into one of those sleepy southern towns that time forgot. Mobile was behind me, along with a whole mess of memories I didn't care to carry. Crooked Creek was supposed to be a fresh start, quiet, peaceful. But peace is a funny thing. It's like the calm before a storm. You never realize how fragile it is until something tears right through it. The first sign of trouble came a few weeks after the flood. I'd been on the job for maybe a month, settling into the rhythm of the place. Morning coffee at Fanny's Diner, polite hellos from folks who eyed me like I didn't belong. But one night, I got a call that shattered everything. "Sheriff Parker, you need to come down to the river." Deputy Travis's voice crackled over the radio. We found something." By the time I got there, the scene was chaos. Lanterns flickered, casting long shadows across the waterlogged campsite. A man lay torn apart in a way that didn't make sense. "Maybe an animal attack," Travis muttered, his face pale. "But what kind of animal does that?" I didn't have an answer. There were tracks in the mud, tracks larger than any bear or wolf I'd ever seen. For the next 2 months, the attacks didn't stop. Every full moon, like clockwork, someone else turned up dead or mauled. And those who survived, well, they weren't the same. Joetta Lewis was one of them. She worked as a clerk at the city hall, but after the night of her attack, something in her changed. Her eyes would flash yellow when she was angry. She became short-tempered and aggressive. People started whispering. And then there was Sweet. I'd heard about him before I met him. Malachi White, the hoodoo man who lived outside city limits in a shack surrounded by cypress trees and hanging bottles. Folks said he could cure any illness you had or curse you, depending on how you got along with him. I thought it was all bullshit, but Sweet kept to himself mostly, and the townspeople liked it that way. Unfortunately, I didn't have that luxury. I was searching an area of woods near his home when I heard it, a low, guttural growl from behind the trees. It sent a chill up my spine. I turned, gun drawn, just as a massive figure leaped from the darkness. The beast was unlike anything I had ever seen, towering, covered in coarse fur, its yellow eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. It lunged, and I fired. The bullet struck, but the beast barely staggered. Before I could get another shot off, it swiped at me, sending me sprawling to the ground. My gun flew from my hand. Pain shot through my ribs, but before the creature could pounce again, a sharp whistle cut through the night. Sweet stood on his porch, muttering words under his breath, his right hand outstretched. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, knocking the beast back. It howled, eyes locked on Sweet, but it hesitated. "Get inside!" Sweet barked. I scrambled to my feet and dashed toward the open door. Sweet slammed the door behind us, bolting it shut just as claws raked against the wood. The creature snarled, circling the cabin, but it didn't force its way in. Sweet lit a candle, his face grave. "This ain't a good place to be after dark." His voice was deep, like the rumble of distant thunder. My hands shook as I scrambled to my feet, my heart hammering in my chest. No one would believe this. Hell, I barely believed it. "How long have you known about this creature?" I demanded. "You're in over your head, Sheriff." He stood, arms crossed, watching me. "This town, it's got old wounds, and these wounds don't heal easy." Like everyone else in town, he knew about the attacks, about the survivors who didn't seem quite themselves. He just shook his head. "I know what's behind it," he finally said. "But knowing ain't fixing. There's power here. Always has been. When the flood came, some folks made a deal they shouldn't have. Now they're paying the price." "Who?" I demanded. "Who made the deal?" Sweet took a couple of steps back and shook his head. "It's best you stay out of it until it all blows over." I took a deep breath, sensing the smell of incense wafting from the next room. "Sweet, I was nearly mauled by a giant wolf tonight, and my patience is thin. Either you tell me what this is about, or you're gonna cool your heels in a jail cell until it all blows over. If it all blows over. I warned. Jeremiah Carter, Sweet said, his gaze darkening. He's the one leading the pack, and he's dangerous. He's threatened me before. Said if I meddle, I'll end up worse than dead. I rubbed my temples. I'm not asking you to fight him, but I need your help, Sweet. If we don't stop this, a lot of people are going to die. He sighed with heavy reluctance. There's a ritual, but it's risky. We need to gather certain things and time it with the full moon. Just tell me what to do, I said. The nights leading up to the full moon were tense. We gathered what we needed, grave dirt from an ancestor's resting place, herbs that only grew in the shadows, and a silver knife passed down through Sweet's family. Meanwhile, the attacks escalated. The wolves grew bolder. They wanted control of the town and weren't afraid to spill blood to get it. The final showdown came on a humid, moonlit night. The cicadas had gone silent, like even nature was holding its breath. Sweet and I stood at the edge of a clearing, the ritual circle drawn in salt and blood. We could hear them coming. Low growls, the snap of twigs under heavy paws. You ready? I asked. Sweet gave me a grim nod. As ready as I'll ever be. Jeremiah stepped into the clearing first, his eyes glowing like embers. He was half transformed, a hulking figure with claws and fangs that gleamed in the moonlight. This is your last warning, Sheriff, he growled. Walk away. This town belongs to us now. Not tonight, I said, raising the silver knife. You've taken enough lives. The fight was brutal. Claws slashed, teeth snapped, and the woods echoed with the sounds of battle. Sweet's chanting grew louder, the air charged with energy that made my skin crawl. Wolves lunged at us from the shadows, their fur bristling with malice. I ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding a set of razor-sharp fangs. My gun was useless, but the silver knife in my grip burned hot like it knew what had to be done. Sweet let out a guttural cry, and a pulse of energy erupted from the ritual circle, sending some of the wolves reeling. But Jeremiah was stronger. He lunged, knocking me to the ground, his weight crushing the air from my lungs. His face was monstrous, caught between man and beast, his eyes filled with something dark and endless. You should have left well enough alone, Sheriff, he snarled, his breath hot against my skin. I gritted my teeth and drove the knife upward. Jeremiah roared, staggering back, clutching his side where silver burned into his flesh. I didn't wait. I lunged, slashing deep across his chest. Blood spattered the ground black under the moonlight. Sweet's chanting reached a fever pitch. The wind howled as the ritual circle flared with brilliant white light. Jeremiah's remaining pack howled in agony, their bodies convulsing as the power binding them unraveled. Jeremiah let out a final, ear-splitting howl before he collapsed. His body twitched, shifting between human and beast, until finally he lay still, fully human. His chest rose once, then stopped. The curse broke with him, the oppressive weight lifting from the circle. The next morning, the town was eerily quiet. Survivors like Joetta seemed different, lighter, like a shadow had been lifted from their souls. Sweet packed up his things and disappeared not long after. He said he'd done his part, and it was time to move on. As for me, I stayed. Crooked Creek still had its scars, and so did I. But I'd found something here, something worth fighting for. Peace might be fragile, but I learned that sometimes you have to face the darkness to hold on to the light. And as long as I was sheriff of this small town, no monster or beast was going to take that away from us again.